How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and today we're going to be taking apart my Lamborghini Gallardo, and I really hope I don't break anything. So for those of you new to my channel, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys like it. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like what you see. This is my 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider. I just picked it up for a princely sum of $64,000 after I sold most of my other cars. And this is the roughest one in the world. Well, if not the world, then the country. If not the country, then definitely in this garage. I have taken off the hood right here so you can see all the twin turbo goodness. And look at that. It looks so cool. I will never get used to seeing this all exposed. I kind of want to just drive it around like this. But I can't really drive it around today because if you've watched my other videos, it doesn't actually go into gear. But today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking apart the rear, and I'm also going to be taking the wheels off because although I do like the design of these wheels, these are Strass forged wheels and they're CNC'd and they're really cool, I don't like the color. I think it's a little bit too loud, it's a little bit too shouty, even though it sort of matches to this, to the brake lights. So I get that, but this is a little bit too loud. I have a theme in mind for this car. It's just gonna be a white on black theme because it follows into the interior. You see the white on black. So that makes a lot of sense. I just wanna follow that outside. So we're gonna have something dark for the color of this wheel. But in order to get this wheel done, I have to get it powder coated. And in order to get it powder coated, I have to take the wheel off. But before we do that, I have to get it up in the air, and that might be a little bit of a challenge because this car is low. All right, so I have modified the stance of this car just a little bit with two planks. I just used Lay Trusty jack from Harbor Freight, and I jacked up the back of the car, not from the differential or engine or anything, but there is a crossbar that is the structure of the car, and you can jack from that point. So I just raised the back of the car up, and filled up the tires with air just to give it that little extra bit of purchase, and I put my Benpack Quick Jack underneath there. You could probably not see it, but you can see it better from the other direction. And I am a little bit concerned as to whether this will work or not, but we shall find out right now. All right, locks are on. Now I can just gently lower it down. Okay, whew. All right, that was actually not very sketchy at all. Now the car has plenty of room underneath, and this will give me a lot of room to get the wheels off and inspect everything that I need to do, especially since I'm going to be taking apart the back end of this and taking out that transmission at some point. I don't think that's going to happen in this episode, but I think I'm going to do that in the near future, and it's going to be pretty quickly because I want to get this car running and on the road. But for now, let's take these babies off. All right, the tires are off the wheels, and these wheels look pretty good, other than that color, of course. So before I talk about what color I'm gonna make this, I wanna talk about the tires a little bit. Now, these are Toyo Proxys R888s, and they're very well suited for track time and stuff like that. The only thing is that these tires are a little bit old. If you look at this, I don't know if you can see it, they're starting to degrade just a little bit. And when you have a car that has 1,000 horsepower, I really wouldn't want to chance it. In addition, I believe on this tire, or it might be a different tire. Yeah, right here, you can see that it has some damage from the fire. It's just singed, and this can introduce dry rot, and it's not very good at all. So I think I'm not going to be putting these tires on. Now, if somebody does want to buy these tires, I'll let them go for really cheap. There's plenty of tread left on them. I would not advise being on these tires for a long time, but yeah, I don't know. Somebody can take their chances. There are 235 19s, and this one is a 295 30 19. So do with that what you must. But this is
This is going to be a new project for me because I've never actually had wheels powder coated. Now these were powder coated when they were first made, when they were first CNC'd. What powder coating is it's like painting, except everything is stripped off. So this is given a chemical bath and it's stripped down to the bare metal. And after it's stripped and all the wax and grease and all the debris is removed, then what they do is they apply an electrical current. They make it positively charged, and then they apply a powder. Well, that's the powder coat essentially, and the powder adheres to the wheel, which is positively charged, and the powder is negatively charged. So there's like a weird electrolysis thing happening. I don't know if electrolysis is the word I want to use. And afterwards, it's put into an oven where it's baked on, and it gives a really, really rigid finish. So that can give a nice polished look, a nice gloss look, and I think that's what I'm going to do. So what I'm thinking of doing as far as color, I want to do something like this, something like a gunmetal, like a titanium metallic. I think that would look really good on these wheels because with the white and the black motif, something like this would match the carbon fiber quite well. Maybe something a little bit darker than that, but that's what I'm going to go with. I don't want to be flashy. I don't want to look like I'm, from a nightclub in Miami. By the way, I am at Untitled Racing. I did have the tires taken off the rims at another shop nearby. Now, the guy was super low-key, didn't want to be on camera, didn't necessarily need a shout-out, so I'm going to leave his anonymity intact. But Untitled Racing, you getting all the shout-outs today. And Andrew is somewhere in there, and he's about to take these wheels. And their powder coater, Scott, well, I don't know if he's working necessarily with them, but Scott is a powder coater that does really good work. He's going to take care of my wheels, and hopefully I should get them back in a reasonable amount of time. So Andrew has come out from his from his slumber.
Anyhow, look, I know what color you're gonna get, and I'm here for it. But look at this color in the sun.
It does pop really nicely. I do admit that. So what I'm gonna do is, I might have mentioned this before, but when we powder coat this, all this stuff has to come off, all the red. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all the red into one cup, and then we're going to paint your wheels that color. What do you think?
Nah.
Okay, well, there you go. So that's why I don't want this red on my wheels. Exactly the same reason. Dude, what is this?
So this is a Toyota Corolla FX16.
All right.
I've done a video on this on the Injuku channel.
So you're a Whip series?
Yeah. So I've got a Whip video on this car. And the owner, Ramon, has some really interesting plans for this car. So go check that video out. It's gonna be, when it's done, it's gonna be a really serious little machine.
Dude, this thing is this thing is great. I love the hood scoop. See, I love stuff like this. I love stuff that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money, but it has a lot of presence. Look at this. All these little stickers, and oh, it's missing a steering wheel. There's your problem. Digging this car, man. Digging it a lot. Maybe I should get one of these. Well, I don't know, you guys tell me. Should I get another car? Yes or no? Like if you say yes, and if no, don't do anything. All right, the tires are dropped off at Untitled Racing with Scott. Super nice guy. Didn't want to put him on camera. He seems pretty low key, not really cut out for this YouTube stuff, but the best in the business as far as powder coating, and he's given me a really good deal. I will put his stuff in the link in the description if you guys want to have any powder coating on your wheels or whatever in the Central Florida area. He comes very well recommended. Now, I haven't personally had anything powder coated by him, but if these guys tell me that he does good work, then he does good work. So let's get back to the car. All right, would you take a look at that? This is quite a sight. So this is a custom twin turbo kit in the back of my Lamborghini Gallardo, and everything's sort of exposed. I still need to take off a lot of this support bracing, and I gotta take off this, but I just wanted to get a better look at the twin turbo kit, and you can see it right here. So these are BorgWarner EFR turbos. I don't know the specific model number. I can look it up, but as you can see, the middle, the center section has a lot of surface corrosion on it, and that is actually normal because these are out in the elements, and this being basically in an open engine bay, since that carbon fiber piece has vents in it, water does get on this, and it does do that. So I might have to do something about that, maybe coat it or something, but I definitely don't want it looking like that. It's looking like it spent its entire life at the bottom of a river. Also, you can see the intakes are right here, one for each turbo, and then the exhaust is right here. It's a straight shot from the turbo right out. This is the heat exchanger for the air-to-water intercooler. Looking at this entire setup, I have a few reservations. Now, I don't know the quality of the work. I don't know the shop. I don't know really anything about this build other than, to me, this looks backwards. And I'll show you what I mean. Now, I'm not a turbo expert by any means, so you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that the intake, this is basically where the engine takes in all of its air. I don't think that the intake should be located in a place where there's not a ton of airflow, there aren't any fans around here, and it's a ton of heat that it's sucking up. So just think about it. There's a hot engine over there. That is that little box right there. That's for the oil. So the oil is going to be really hot. You have the air-to-water intercooler, which is relatively cool, but still it can be a heat source depending on how hot the water gets. And also the heat exchanger right here, which doesn't really have a lot of air flowing through it to begin with. Also, the transmission is right there. So you have a hot transmission, hot engine, heat exchanger, and the intakes are right here, and it's not getting a ton of airflow. That is really, really suboptimal. Usually in most turbo kits on this car, the intakes are routed the other way. So the intakes are right here in the fender well, and this will allow it to get away from the hot engine bay gases. And it's more of a cold air intake right here, really. But here, this is a different setup altogether. Now, if we just flip the turbos around just for argument's sake, and we have the intake here and the exhaust here, what happens is we can then route the exhaust so they meet in the middle in like an X pipe, and the X pipe it'll be good for performance, it'll be good for flow, and it'll be good for the car sounding like that V10, that high-pitched wail that I really want this car to have. It has to do with exhaust scavenging, meaning that the pulses kind of run into each other and they actually improve flow. And that's the way a lot of these turbo kits, like Hefner and UGR and all those other companies, those turbo kits are routed like that. I haven't seen any turbo kits routed like this because this doesn't seem right to me. Now, as always, I could be wrong about this. I'm not an expert on turbochargers. I'm not an expert on turbo systems, but just logically, it should make sense. So let me know in the comments, am I right? Am I wrong? Does this maybe not make any sense, or does it make perfect sense? One of my friends, Bozy, told me that while this might not look good on paper, it might not have the effect that I think, so I'll have to monitor the engine with the temperatures and all that stuff. Honestly, I can do that, but I think it'll be easier just to kind of do the other system, and it'll make it a DIY thing. It'll make it a custom build for my car, which I wanted to do anyway if I got a Gallardo. Just so happens that this came with a twin turbo kit, but I think I need to definitely modify this. So in the coming episodes, I will be taking off all this stuff because I have to take off the transmission and check out what that clutch is like. But since we're in disassembly mode today, I wanted to show you some of the stuff I found when I went under the car. First off, let's check over here. Now, this is the inner wheel well. Some of you have remarked that you saw something cracked by this suspension. Actually, it's not, nothing's cracked. It was just the fender liner. It's this thing, and what you saw was probably the underside of this. Probably that. It's metal, and it looks like it's cracked from the top, but it's not. It's just, yeah, that's the way it is. So if we look over here, this is the driver's side rear fender arch, I'm guessing, and it is a little bit worse for the wear. You can see that there's a lot of yellowing here, and that's from the fire. So, good Lord, there's a fire. There was a fire right here. It took off all the paint here and all the carbon fiber. It's basically just, yeah, it's seen better days. I'm not sure if this is savable. This might need to, yeah, I might need to replace this. These are actually pretty expensive, but all the components here are in decent shape. I think the fender liner, because the fender liner wasn't originally included in this car. I think that took the brunt of the impact because you can see what was left of the fender liner, it's kind of melted off. So that might be, yeah, that might be our sacrificial part here. But if we look over here, you see that there's some lines that are straight up melted. And this looks like just the insulation for the lines, but I'm willing to bet that the electrical parts underneath, you see right there, yeah, they're not in great shape. There's some pigtails that probably need to be refurbished. This one definitely needs to be replaced. Now take a look at that. That's just looks like Play-Doh. Yeah, it's pretty bad. And also this the coating for, come on, focus. The coating for the remote reservoir shock, yeah, it's pretty much burned. But that's just the outer coating. The inner coating is, let's see if we can, really hard to focus here. Yeah, so the inner coating is actually a stainless steel. So that should be okay, but I might just replace that just to be safe. Now the brake lines and everything seem to be okay. No singeing and no damage there. So right here, this is part of the motorized top, and as you can see, it's not really connected to anything. Yeah, I gotta figure out why that is. I gotta figure out where that goes, and maybe it was just improperly installed, like a lot of things on this car. But this is actually pretty savable. If you look at the structure is nearly flawless. I mean, other than just some yellowing on the paint, it's really, really not bad. Yeah, there's no crash damage anywhere on the car, and it looks like everything else is pretty good. But let's go underneath the car, and I'll show you a little bit more of what I found. All right, you guys ever been underneath a Lamborghini? Well, neither have I. It'll be a first time for all of us. So here is the starter. It looks to be in okay shape. And one thing I noticed right away is right here, you can see that there is a bit of oil pooling up right here, or fluid. I can't tell what it is, but this could be the reason why my clutch doesn't work. It might be the throwout bearing, and the throwout bearing could be leaking, and it could be leaking right there. If you take a look at the clutch, you might be able to see inside. Yeah, the clutch inside, it looks a bit corroded. It's not great news. So maybe it could just use a good wire wheel or something just to get the surface corrosion off. But we might need to replace that clutch as well, and those are pretty expensive. So if we go over here, we'll look at our first sort of mod. And these are the return lines for the turbos, and they go into 1Y, and that looks like it's seeping a little bit, and it's zip tied here, zip tied at the clutch housing, which is not good, and it's pinched right there at the, well, this would be the unibody, but I think it's called a monocoque, and that goes into this, which is also seeping. That's the oil return. But if we look to the right, you see these. So these are the lines going to the front of the car, and they are in horrible shape. Like, these are supposed to be holding coolant, and these look both burnt and debris blasted and everything, and dirty, and yeah, these are disgusting. So I have to fix those. Also, they're going underneath the frame, and that's not where they're supposed to go. They're supposed to not be the lowest point of the car, and that's also why the rear valence was not able to seat. You can actually see that the rear valence, that's part of the rear valence, and it just broke off. So that's great. I'm gonna have to take all these lines off, then just order new lines, and maybe I'll relocate the this heat exchanger because I hate the placement back here. By the way, I have a bunch of ports that are disconnected. So if we keep going down, you can see this drive shaft right here, that actually goes to the front of the car, to the front differential. So it's really ingenious. Instead of having a center diff or something like that, there's a drive shaft, and it goes directly into a splined gear on the transmission. And we follow that back, and you see right there, that's the drive. So it's just a splined gear, and it goes all the way down. And that keeps the center of gravity low, and it makes all the sense in the world. Everything is pretty visibly corroded, but it's not to the point of failure or anything. So this is all savable. This is I could just take a wire wheel to it and just clean it up just a bit, just in case I go to one of those car shows where they put a mirror underneath their car. But one thing I did notice that I do need to replace, and sorry about the shaky cam, there's not a ton of space back here, but look at that. I have a ripped axle boot. And this is likely from the fire, but who knows? I mean, these axle boots do tend to rip time and time again, because when cars get lower or something like that, they take too much stress. And it's also ripped on the other side, but I don't think I can get a camera on that. So I think the axles should still be okay, but I will be replacing those boots, because usually when boots rip, they rip and they spew fluid everywhere. So I think this probably died after the fire. So I guess we lucked out there, but I'll just definitely have to re-grease it. Take a look at that brake line over there. It's actually an electronic line and it doesn't seem to be connected. It looks like it was just ripped off, and it's the same on the other side. So I have to figure out why that is. Maybe it's because the ECU can't handle the signals coming from the brakes for the brake pad sensors, but I think this is probably just a bad install. There's plenty of zip ties, there's plenty of corroded crap, but if we take all of this apart and start from scratch, we should be good, and I think the bones of this car are good. I mean, the transmission looks okay, it looks like it shifts into all the gears, and I know I'm just showing you a close-up shot of a lot of mechanical components without much context, but yeah, I'm basically, my face is almost touching the the top of this car. Well, the bottom of the top of the bottom of this car. I don't know what I'm saying right now. And if we come up top, we can see that this fuel line, I know I mentioned it in my last video where I talked about everything wrong with this car, but this fuel line is, it makes this weird loop. So it goes from the fuel tank, this is one half of the fuel tank, and it just goes into this 90, goes around, goes into a fuel filter, comes around again, and then goes to the fuel rail. Now, I think that this is because when the tray for the top is here, it blocks the engine up to about here. And this is probably to take, well, this isn't the fuel filter. Fuel filter is actually underneath here. So this is just to make fuel filter changes easier. What I would do is, to avoid all this on top of a hot engine, I would just run the line across, make sure that this is a good sturdy line. I mean, if you take a look at this, I can move it and you can see the fitting is actually moving. So that will leak. That is 100. And look, I think, yeah, it's like just smushed. That's just, oh my God, so bad. So what I would do is, maybe you guys can correct me, but what I would do is I just take an AN line, bring it across here, and then from here, I would do all the work here. So I would put the fuel filter somewhere down here, maybe attach it to the frame here. That way, I could just go underneath and change the fuel filter. You know, if it's maybe right here or right here, just somewhere away from that hot engine bay. Because if you have high pressure fuel and it sprays out and it goes on those hot exhaust manifolds, that's when you get a fire. Nobody wants a fire, especially on a car this cool. So I'm going to be doing the same thing on the other side, but the other side is a lot more complicated just because there's a fuel filler neck, there's a bunch of emission stuff there. So I have to look at the factory service manuals, and you guys were really good at sending me those factory service manuals. I was really surprised. So I'm gonna look through them tonight, and I'm definitely gonna come up with a diagram to see how to get this car back to a stock-ish running situation, and hopefully we can get this running and driving pretty quickly. So I have my fingers crossed. I don't promise anything just because there's so many variables here and you guys see the state of this car, but I am really excited. But for now, I'd like it to stay like this for a little while, just so I can work out the fuses and maybe some electrical issues inside. So I'm gonna be checking the fuse boxes and making sure that maybe our tune is on point, because it can't rev past 3,000 RPM. I might connect my laptop to the Cyvex unit if I can get that to work. So that's going to be interesting. That's going to be coming up in future episodes. But right now, I just want you guys to see this awesome twin turbo kit that is actually backwards. in my opinion. So I think it's going to be looking really cool, and I think I'm going to do the usual run without a bumper with the twin turbo kit in full display when I actually get this thing running for a little while. I think I have to do that. It's just kind of customary. Plus, it's just really, really cool. But let me stop rambling. This has been a lot of fun working on this car. It's actually not that hard to take off these body panels. It's fairly simple, and it's a lot simpler because these body panels actually did not have a lot of screws on them. Yeah, quite a few screws were missing, so I'm gonna have to source those. But it's always a challenge in this car, and that's why I bought it. So if you'd like to contact me, you can do so at TheRealTavarish. That's Instagram and Twitter. Facebook.com/AskTavarish and AskTavarish@gmail.com is my email. Send me stuff about this car. Send me stuff I don't know. If you guys have any information about the history of this car, then please send it to me. I'm really interested in seeing that. I know a lot of you guys have messaged me about that you've seen this car and maybe it's had a sketchy history. I will be making a video on that in the future when I detail all my plans for the car. That might be coming up on Monday, but for now I'm just going to keep wrenching on this car a little bit at a time, and hopefully it doesn't beat me. So until next time, this is me telling you that on cars like this that are taken apart and they still look kind of cool, you guys need to wrench every day.